Welcome to Channel AMEC, your insight to the Australian visa system. Good day everyone, my name is Carl Young, your online YouTube visa consultant. Are you interested about migrating to Australia? Why don't you consider to subscribe to my channel and turn on a little bell on the side. So once we have all the updates and news, you'll be the first one of getting all the insight. In today's video, I would like to review and have a look into the state nominations skill migration, in particular in the detail of the state of New South Wales and Victoria. Obviously, it's the most inquired and also the most populated states. And popular state by means all the renowned universities and institutions are there. So a lot of people actually study abroad in Sydney and Melbourne, and once they looking to complete their courses, obviously looking for options to actually stay in those regions other than Queensland or other places. So in this video we will discuss in detail how 2022 the state nomination of skill migration for Victoria and New South Wales. So make sure you watch to the end, so I'll provide a summary how this will go, and obviously a little bit of updates in regards to the virus, how that will affect your visa applications. Now first of all, let's have a look at the immigration's webpage, which has a very generic information. Now if you're not familiar with, I've done a series of video of how skill migration work and how the SkillSelect system work. Anyhow, we're looking into the state nomination, so in particular of subclass 190 and 491. Now I'm not showing 491 here because it's similarly the same, it's just different name and regions. Now different between 190, obviously 190 provides you into permanent residency straight away, which is more preferable. However, the requirement is higher than 491. 491 is much more preferred for a lot of recent graduates, where your background is not that strong as to meet the criteria for 190. So 491 is for most of the graduate, whereby well, the disadvantage of the state of Victoria and New South Wales is that 491 requires you to go to regional Australia, so you cannot stay in the big cities. But anyhow, it's still the most commonly asked type of category of visas. So subclass 190 and subclass 491, it's all the state nomination, and how they work is basically they work on the point system. So you need to get at least 65 points, but if you go to 491, they got you another 15 points for state nomination. So if you want to go into the detail of how the points are calculated, I've done a specific video on this one. So let's jump into the detail of how those state works. Now first of all, let's go into New South Wales. So New South Wales does provide options for 190 and options for 491. I will give you a little brief on this one. Now the good part about New South Wales recently is that they have opened up for offshore applicants. Now opening up doesn't mean they will invite you straight away. So a lot of people leave me a comment, when and how. I've been waiting for so long, when do I get it? Now we don't know, we don't have an answer now. Hopefully we can, but I do not think any government sector will actually allow those answers to be out there, especially during pandemic. As you know, there's a lot of international travel restrictions going on, although Australia did have their border open back on 15th of December 2021, but there's still a lot of restriction. Obviously with the spike of Omicron going on worldwide, I doubt the invitation and the round to be invited will be a better clear or improve in the most common recent month for at least first quarter. I mean January until March, I don't think there's much improvement will be there. So invitation round is basically the system is invitation based, and it goes by round and round and round. As you can see, there are no set dates and they are not announcing beforehand. So the government, basically New South Wales government, is saying, look, we'll do it when we like. Anyway, and that's how they approach. So New South Wales cannot advise date of coming New South Wales invitation round, likelihood, and your SkillSelect EOI will be invited by contacting our office. So again, a lot of people ask me, when do I get invited? That's the answer. We don't know. We cannot know. We can't literally access to that anyhow. Now there's obviously the differences between every state is their occupation list, and obviously we're discussing how Victoria works, because they don't work in occupation list anymore. Now there is onshore candidates. So if you're residing onshore, meaning that you're in New South Wales, your foot is actually stepped on New South Wales soil. What do you do? Currently residing, so you need to show that you have genuinely continued residing in New South Wales for the past 3 months. Obviously you need to show evidence of past 3 months of where you rent, you pay the rental, you pay the your bank statements, your driver license and things like that. Being gainfully employed in a long-term capacity in your occupation for minimum 20 hours per week. So that's fine, but again, you need to be you need to meet that requirement there. And what else is out there? I think there's additional things here. Okay, anyway, we'll go around there. I think, oh, here we go. The work experience is actually a lot, but they also open up for offshore candidate. If you're residing offshore, you must be continuously residing offshore for the past 3 months. For sure. I mean, with the virus situation going on, how do you, unless you're a tennis player, I'm not too sure what else you can actually be traveling around. Okay, you must have a skills assessment. Okay, and that's for sure, because they should have that done here as well, but they have it up here. I'm not too sure why they said that you have a skill assessment, because it's already saying up here already, and it has to be in the New South Wales skill occupation. And we'll check that one out. Specifying some occupation they are available for offshore applicants. So. Alright, for 190 New South Wales, you must have minimum 3-year work experience in your nominated occupation for all occupation within the NSW unit group, and this unit group, blah blah blah, is all in the New South Wales occupation. So we'll take a look at that. This applies to all SkillSelect EOI regardless when you were submitted and amended. Your 3-year work experience must be deemed skill employed. That means. Now that sentence is actually very important. They should highlight that. That means the work experience has to be post qualification and deemed skill. For example, if you're an accountant, you graduate as an accountant, the first year that you're out of graduation you work, that's not deemed to be skill. You need to accrue at least 1 year full-time work experiences. Then the work experiences after that will be deemed skill. Now every occupation is different. You might want to seek out a series of, I've done a series of video on the skill assessment, so for every different type of occupation. Generally, the easier way to understand it is if your study contains internships, then you are not required to have additional work experiences after graduation to be deemed skilled. Okay, so for example, engineers, you have some prac and internship, architects, and also what else? All the medical and the educators, teachers, they require to go through internship and practices during their studies. Then after they graduate, they're not required to have additional work experiences to be deemed skill. So that's basically what it is. So for example, in accountants and IT, you don't need to go into workforce and internships. So then once you graduate, you need to accrue additional 1 year of full-time work to be deemed skill employment. Okay, so that's what it is. So that's for 190. Let's jump in to check out the occupation list. Now you may want to have a good search on this web page yourself, because I'm not going to take too much time going through every single occupation there, because New South Wales is just going berserk because they want occupation lists for different regions, and there are 14 regions. We're going to come up with a 491, but for 190, here we go. For managers, there are some offshore options for basically all the engineers and managers. And so these are the offshore options. If they are not ticked with offshore, for example, construction managers, then obviously they can only accept onshore. They're very limited onshore managers. And for example, if they get ICT managers, then they need that experience there. That's the 3-year minimum requirement. So obviously construction manager can be onshore and with no experiences. But the problem is, how do you become construction manager? It's not that easy. There's no actual course that actually get done by that one. Anyhow, professionals. So as you can see, they only want, I'm not too sure why they want Liberian from offshore, but the accountants and the auditor required to have 3-year work experiences, and all the engineer can, they will take them from offshore. But look, this doesn't mean if you're an engineer, you'll be accepted offshore. So many people comment and ask me, oh, why am I not getting invited? I mean, look, once you squeeze into the system, you make that requirement, there are still a lot of people there. Now you make sure you have the highest points. So for example, if you're a civil engineer professional, okay, and your points is 80 points. Now there are probably a lot of people with 85, 90 points, and they're offshore as well. So then what would the government do? They'll pick the brightest. They will pick the one with the highest points. So make sure you have the highest point there. Okay, so they want teachers offshore as well. Midwife, nurses for offshore too, right? I'm not too sure how these nurses will choose to travel to Australia right now with all these Omicron going on at the moment. For IT people, they need them to be experienced, as you can see there. Now social care workers and psychologists, technicians as well, they want more people because they need people to build New South Wales. As you can see here, they need a lot of these people, but with the experience as well. Whoa, look, I'm not too sure how you can actually get that unless you are a UK citizen, US citizen, or New Zealand citizen, or Irish citizens, or Canadian citizen, and you are in these category traits with experiences, then you probably be able to be nominated too. So that's how you read this one. Now let's move on to the 491 for New South Wales. It's generally the same. There's not much of differences, but it's going into regions, and they have 3 different streams. Let's have a look. Now the stream 1 is I'm living and working in regional New South Wales. Obviously, then we go and check out with the stream 1 combined occupation list. So it's just so complex. It's becoming so complex. Every state have their own requirement, and New South Wales is far more the most complex, one of the most complex. I think the other one will be ACT Canberra, but they just have so many selections. I'm not too sure why they're doing that. Why don't they simplify it? Not too sure. Now stream 2 is I have recently completed study in regional New South Wales. Now regional New South Wales, it's very the access of a university is really scarce. So it's either Newcastle or Wollongong, and I think there's nowhere else. And another one is it's in the Southern Cross University, which is right on top, near the border with Queensland, and that's I think that's it. Otherwise, there's no more other ones. You need to study for 2 years. And stream 3, I'm skilled in occupation required by regional New South Wales. So anyway, there's a preferred region occupation list. We'll go in there, have a look. The process is the same. You put in your SkillSelect, and then you submitted ROI, registration of interest, and obviously then New South Wales will check the things out and whether or not they're gonna accept you or not. So let's come back to the occupation list. Let's close these ones so it's much more clear. So these are for 190, and it's nothing to do with 491. So 491 does have, look at this, how many skill occupation lists there are. They are 15 in combined. So if you are living and working, which is it, the stream 1 is living and working in regional. Okay, so then we go on this one here. So and these are and they're changing it all the time as well. So have a look. These are all the occupation that they love you to be there. Okay, and if you're in the recent completed study, there's a preferred region occupation list. What is that? That is down here. Okay, so you need to check out which region you are. Now, some people do study TAFE in some of the region of New South Wales, but it's very limited. You need to go into every single different region. And look at this. This is just phenomenal. It's just going crazy. So if I go through all of this, it will probably take half day. So you don't want to watch YouTube for half day. So what I'm gonna do is basically showing you and direct you, point to the direction where you can actually find them. Okay, so let's summarize of what we have learned in New South Wales. Basically, from 190, there are some occupation open up for offshore. Make sure you have the highest EOI so you can be selected, but it doesn't guarantee that you'll be selected, and New South Wales doesn't giving you any point of time when the invitation round will actually work. So people ask me, what is my chances and when do I get invited? How would the offshore application be processed? There's no answer to that because the government basically just answered that with no answer. Okay, so don't ask them and don't ask me because I don't have any answer there. But once you put in your EOI and you believe that your documentation survives the requirement, make sure you have put in another ROI, registration of interest. So the EOI and ROI, put it in, then you will be there for the New South Wales skill migration state nomination process. Okay, now let's jump into Victoria. Now, basically the fundamental of the 190 and 491 is the same. It's just the criteria by state is different. So Victoria is different. Victoria does offer 190 and it does offer 491 as well. Look at this. The web page is much more simpler. Yes, it is, and there is no occupation list anymore. That means it can be any occupation, but the game playing here for Victoria is totally different. So it says who can apply. To be eligible to apply, obviously you need to meet the federal the immigration 190's criteria. Then you registered your interest. So whether I think who started with this ROI? I think it's Victoria, and then New South Wales start copying them, because New South Wales back then it's they go into EOI pool and then they basically invite you and you fill in your application. Now they are copying Victorian government that prior to do that you need to put an ROI in. So EOI ROI same. So you need to put both EOI and ROI in there. Okay. And 190, you need to be showing that you're living and working in Victoria. So it's very similar to what the New South Wales is actually offering. But here's the problem. Now, we read this under 45, competent English, skills assessment, and 65 points. That's all the same. Everybody needs to meet that requirement. The only differences here is this. The Victorian target sector. You need to be in those target sector. Make sure, and you're going to be live and work in those target sectors. Let's check it out. What are those target sectors? Okay, so they are health. Now, obviously, you need to work in there. Well, if you're a chef, yes, you may be working in the health sector. For example, you're a chef for a hospital. Okay, so that's fine. Okay, but predominantly, obviously, health. What do you think? Nurses, all the medical practitioners, right? Medical research. It's very similar to health, but it's more for people working at lab scientists and things like that. And there's a life science. There's very connected. You can see all these targeted sectors are all technological preferenced. Right, so life science, again, that's pharmaceutical and things like that. So bioscience and things. Digital, that's all the IT, including agri-tech, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, digigame, blah blah blah. It's all the technological stuff. Applicant working in any segment. I cannot think of any other segment apart from all this. So anyway, but you need to be live and working in those sector. Okay, agri-food, I think this is almost like what about agri-tech? Agri-tech probably will connect to agri-food because agri is food, or probably not. Anyway, it's a very similar, but probably this is more nutrient directed or targeted type of science. Advanced manufacturing, so that's all the IC design house. New energy and creative industry. I think this creative industry is more related to, for example, the metaverse, the multimedia stuff. So that's if we go into ICT, that's all including there. So what's the advantage here? The problem here is if you study accountant, and if you study, for example, civil engineer, for example, how do you fit in those target sector? And that's the problem. And that is the real problem. Basically, Victoria's state nomination for skilled migrants are technological focus. If you're not in any type of tech industry and work in there, so for example, if you graduate as a chef, you need to find a hospital or an IT firm. You can't be working as chef in an IT firm, but hospital is a possibility. And that's gonna be very, very hard. I mean, what about all the other type of occupations? Anyway, that's how Victoria work. And for 491, it's the same. It's actually harder. Why would I say that? Because who can actually apply? Obviously, you need to be in a designated regional area of Victoria. Wow, that's great. So that's basically excluding Melbourne CBD. Okay, again, you need to put your ROI in EOI first, in ROI. Okay, living and working in regional Victoria. Great. Okay, I'm not too sure. You can work there and you meet these requirements, no problem. But again, you gotta be in the target sector again. So 491 literally requires you to live and work in regional Victoria, and by way of getting invited, you gotta be kidding. You gotta be working in these sectors in regional Victoria. Digital, agri-food, life sciences. I mean, yes, they may be, but it's very, very limited. Okay. Anyway, so that's gonna be hard, especially for newly graduates. How would that work? I'm not too sure. Recently, obviously, I haven't heard anyone really coming to me through this way of migration. But Victoria does offer another pathway. Let's have a look what it is. It's a name of workforce skill pathway. So I think they probably found out. This came out in the second half of 2021. I think the government of Victoria had finally noticed that their criteria is actually too hard. For example, 491 working in the STEM sector, the target sectors in regional Victoria. That is just too hard. How do you find those kind of work and already been living and working there? So they're offering two occupation now for the workforce skill pathway. One is hospitality and the other one is the early childhood teachers. Now, what is the requirement here? Basically, it basically says just getting, fix the gaps of the employment, things like that. So eligibility to assist industry address labor shortage caused by the obviously pandemic. Victorian government has established. I think that's just the pandemic. I mean, even there's no pandemic, how do you get people in regional Victoria in target sector and be employed? I think that's even harder. I think the policy and criteria is actually harder than the cause of the pandemic. Anyway, you may have different view. Leave a comment with me and let's chat about that topic there. The Victorian government has established hospitality pathway and highly skilled cook and chef. All right, so no restaurant manager. They only want cook and chef. For further information pathway to, we will check that one out for the cook and chef. And they will be eligible under 190-491 with the nomination. So that's one there. And the other one is the Victoria government is investing almost 5 billion for the 3-year-old kindergarten. Oh, great. Okay, good. So they need more people. They need 6,000 teaching jobs across Victoria. So this is partnership with Department of Education and Training. To be eligible, you'll be eligible 491 and 190 criteria, living, working in Victoria as an early childhood teacher. So it's a bonus for early childhood teacher. Anywhere that you are in Victoria, as long as you're working, you'll be under this one. So that is the easier way. It's basically Victoria is telling people now, apart from all these techie people, other occupation is available for Victoria is cook and chef and early childhood teacher. That's basically the message they are trying to give it out. So let's check out how the cook and chef will actually meet the requirement. They've been nominated. I mean, this will be pretty easy to go through because I'm not too sure why they're talking about employment sponsor, because that's nothing to do with the state government. But anyhow, they basically telling you, look, if you can get sponsored, just do it by yourself. Don't come to Victorian government. I think that's the message they're getting. Anyway, if you're a cook and chef, so instead of employer sponsor, Victorian government nominate you. Once nominated by Victoria government, you will be able to apply 491 or 190. Cook and chef eligible for apply to hospitality, and that's it. Okay, so the 491 visa allow you to work for 5 years. Yeah, we know that you're not tied to a specific employer. Victoria does not charge visa nomination, so the processing time, oh, that's great, 51 days. That's still a lot. And the DHA will 13 months anyway. That's crazy. Okay, 190, same thing. You're allowed to work, and processing time. I'm not too sure why they post this, because this changes all the time. So cook and chef submit their ROI by selecting hospitality workforce skill pathway, and that's it. Again, it doesn't mean that you are a cook and chef and being employed in Victoria will actually automatically get invited. You put in your EOI and ROI in and select the workforce pathway, skill pathway, and they basically compare everybody, all the candidates' points, and they will invite you. Again, Victoria, any government will not provide when they will invite you, and they will not provide how many they will invite, and they will not provide what was the points and things. I think the only government they are doing this was Western Australia and ACT territory government. They will provide the previous data, but all the other state government won't do that. Anyway, to summarize this, so New South Wales and Victoria, if you want to skill migrate to these two states, make sure you have one EOI, and then once that's done, and then you put in your ROI. And depends whether you're onshore or offshore, you're working and living in there, and different occupation. And for New South Wales, unfortunately, if you're a regional, gosh, there's 15 different occupation lists. You need to check them out. But for Victoria, if you're living and working in those target sector, that's great. You probably be in. But if you're not, you're probably out. So if you're not, the easier way is whether or not you're a cook or chef, or perhaps you're an early child teacher. Anyway, should you have more question query, more than welcome to leave a comment right down below. And God bless 2022 for Australia. I'll see you next video. Goodbye.